A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Taiwanja Bella, your host. Tonight on the platform, we are welcoming back an old friend who hasn't been here in a long time, and that is Dr. Alfredo Hengari. He is a presidential advisor in the presidency, of course, and also a press secretary in the office of the president. Doc, it's a pleasure to have you because it's the first time this year that we are meeting.
Good evening to you, Febo.
Yeah.
It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah.
It is indeed the first time that we meet this year.
Yeah.
I think we last met last year.
Yeah, yes.
And of course, the reasons are quite obvious.
Yes.
It's been a very challenging year.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I get that. Yeah. Man, when you say the reasons are obvious, of course, you are referring to the tragic events that unfolded earlier in the year. We lost our president, Hage Geingob, whom we have worked closely with twice, first as a prime minister, and now when he became president, you also served him as his press secretary and advisor. How was that transition from President Hage Geingob to President Mbumba? And I'm not very much referring to what transpired on the 4th, the swearing in and whatnot. I think that was very obvious. But in the office itself, how was the transition?
The transition was quite smooth because President Mbumba is an old friend and comrade of President Geingob.
Yeah.
The two have known each other for over 5 decades. Different styles, but shared ideals, shared vision. For the development of the Namibian people, both are leaders who believe in the unity of Namibians. They are both inclusive and focused on the task of development. So the transition from our departed president, Hage Geingob, to President Mbumba, in that sense, was much easier. And we immediately got the ball rolling. President Mbumba mourned with us. He cried with us. He was empathetic towards the Namibian people. He understood them very well because he knows Namibians. He has served in a number of portfolios in cabinet. And you will also recall that he was the first secretary to cabinet. So he set up the administrative system that we have in the country. So in that sense, you as Namibians, we're privileged to have an old hand at the command of the Namibian state. So that made the transition, even for those of us who worked with President Geingob for many years, much easier. Much easier.
Yeah. Do you think the fact that he was already vice president also helped matters a little bit because he was very close to the operations at that level? Exactly.
As vice president, he was the second most important personality in the presidency. And President Geingob's leadership style was quite inclusive. The vice president would be part of the decision-making structure of the system, and they were close friends, so they trusted each other in ways that are unimaginable. And so it made it much easier for many of us because we have a leader in President Mbumba who knows the system in and out.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that his ability to connect with ordinary Namibians, business leaders, political leaders, is quite exemplary for many of us, with a lot of humility, tact, nobility, but also strategic foresight in terms of the issues that are confronting Namibians.
Do you think that because that unfortunate passing of President Hage Geingob has also taught us a lot of lessons? It was a new situation in our country in many ways. and it might have also caught us might be napping in some way, because it's just natural that when something has not happened before, that we are likely then to have not been prepared in some way or others. So one of the arguments is that the vice president's position prior to the 4th of February was seen very much as some sort of ceremonial position, not very active. President Mbumba in that capacity played a very low-key role, welcoming diplomats, hosting visitors from abroad and whatnot. He didn't really do much. He wasn't very active. Do you think that we must attach more importance to that office going forward?
I don't agree with the assertion that the vice president, as a position, as an office, is not active. In terms of the important assignments that I can think on top of my mind, for example, Trevor, you will know that the vice president is the one, for example, who's been piloting the important question of the genocide. It falls under the ambit of the vice president. President Mbumba led that process with determination until its conclusion, when the Germans admitted to the fact that they had committed a genocide in Namibia in 1904 to 1908, and that they need to offer an apology to Namibians, and that they need to offer reparations. So that's the vice president. It's President Mbumba who led that process, taking over from Vice President Niki Yambo, who sadly passed away. So that's one. Number two, the vice president is also very important in terms of leading the matters of marginalized people. The vice president is also important in terms of leading many other things as assigned by the head of state. And President Gengo delegated many tasks to the vice president. Of course, they may not be in the headlines, because your headlines focus on other things, but it's a substantive office that is inscribed in our constitution, and the reasons for that office in terms of our democratic architecture remain valid now more than ever.
Yeah, you're an international relations guy, PhD in that space. And you have traveled vastly, especially since joining the presidency some years ago to date. Do you think that when you go around the world seeing how other governments have been set up and so forth, that we have, and maybe it's not within your ambit to answer this, but there's a general observation. President, vice president, prime minister, deputy prime minister. Namibia has that. That's a crazy, top-heavy structure.
I wouldn't agree, because you would recall that our nation is very diverse, as small as we are, ethnically diverse, politically diverse, socially, and in many other ways. And the constitution is very clear in terms when it comes to the position of the vice president, and the position must reflect the national character of the Republic of Namibia. And President Gengo always used to say that peace has a cost. Unity is paramount, because without unity, development cannot take place. And we need to have some of these positions in order to entrench the unity of the Namibian people, people from diverse tribal backgrounds. And we do know that there are tribal entrepreneurs, agitators, people who seek division, people who are factional. And we need to manage all these challenges. And the role of the vice president in managing that diversity is quite critical. And President Mbumba, as vice president in that role, played a critical role, as well as Vice President Nikki Yambo before him. So we do need to accept that so that social cohesion would require that we made certain sacrifices. And I think the question of cost becomes slightly material, because when you look at the cost of political office bearers in terms of our broader national budget becomes quite insignificant. But the peace that we maintain through some of these constructs cannot be measured. There's no price for peace.
I hear you. So you described President Mbumba earlier on as a fair and inclusive man. There's something that happened recently that may actually contradict that assertion, and that is when the Electoral Commission of Namibia came to State House recently to pay a courtesy visit to the president. And upon arrival, they found the SWAPO Secretary General among the president's people that waited for ECN there. That was very, very highly unethical.
No, I wouldn't say highly unethical, that matter does not detract from the fact that President Mbumba is a fair leader, inclusive, open, and committed to our democratic franchise. And the reason why President Mbumba convened that meeting was born out of a concern for our democratic franchise, because he is always saying that no, if you have 1.6 million potential voters, all of them must vote, and irrespective of who they vote for. That's his view. But what is important is that we get all those Namibians to register to vote. That was the primary concern of the president. And as I said, being a fair leader and a candid as well, there is, it was maybe an omission on our part, but we didn't look at it through the political lens of favoring the SWAPO party, Secretary General, and so on, because the concerns of the Secretary General with regard to the registration of voters is not partisan. It's a concern of a political leader, and so the president wanted to understand where we were in the process. And as you can see, that meeting also provided renewed impetus on the part of other political parties and leaders to push the registration of voters process to where we are more or less satisfied. I think we might be over 80% registration of voters, because you need to understand, Trevor, that when you have 80% registration of voters over a period of several months, voting takes place over a day, if not two. Therefore, you will have statistically a reduced number. Therefore, you need to mobilize massively for the registration of voters. And that was the only concern of President Mbumba, who has been emphasizing our collective commitment to a democratic system that serves each and every Namibian, because President Mbumba understands that in his role as head of state, he embodies the will of all the Namibian people, irrespective of race, creed, political party, or whatsoever.
I hear you. I think it was a miscalculation. I mean, you mentioned omission. I mean, you in a way are saying, look, maybe it should have done better. You're just not saying it the way I'm saying it, but which I think is a good thing, because the reaction of the public must have, the president must have reflected on how the public reacted to that and reflected himself to say, look, maybe I should have done it differently.
Yeah, no, I think we are a transparent government, and this meeting did not take place behind closed doors. I wish you yourself were there as editor of a very important English daily to see for yourself some of these things and to reach the right conclusions as well, because it was an open, transparent meeting, nothing behind closed doors. President Mbumba raised matters of concern as they are calibrated to him by ordinary citizens, and also based on his own impressions as head of state and, importantly, a Namibian citizen.
Absolutely. We go for a very short break and return with Dr. Alfredo Hengari.
Neopaints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neopaints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neopaints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
We continue our conversation with Dr. Alfredo Hengari. Now, Doc, there's one thing that I want to touch base with you quickly before we move to other things, and it's regarding the late president, our late president. After he passed away, there were a lot of media reports, some of them quoting very senior government officials, ministers and whatnot. Some say that the president was informed that he only had 6 months to live, maximum. Very scary situation, to be told. I'm wondering whether it was correct, ethically and otherwise, to keep him in the office, knowing that he was in that condition. Were we selfish as Namibians and those of you around him to have made him work and carry out such a heavy responsibility to lead the country when he was actually terminally ill?
No, I think we should not open another polemic around the status of the health of the president, of our late president, Hage Geingob. I was with President Geingob in January when he was not feeling well, and I'm fully aware of the first and second diagnosis. That's January. And also we communicated transparently as the presidency, because that is part of our ethos in terms of governance. And it would be therefore be incorrect for you to say that President Geingob was kept in office whilst everybody knew that he was terminally ill. That is entirely incorrect. The dates, if I'm not mistaken, on the 18th of January, the presidency communicated in a manner that was elaborate that President Geingob had been diagnosed with cancerous cells. And that was following a conclusion by doctors maybe just 2 days earlier. Therefore, at no point was President Gengo kept in office by anybody. And at no point was he unable to perform his duties as head of state. It's unfortunate that he passed away as a result of those cancerous cells. It is behind us, and you also know very well that the person that President Gengo was, and he would always say it, that if I'm unable to perform my duties as president due to ill health, I will resign. I will allow our system, our processes and institutions to take course. And that's how selfless he was. And you would also recall that at all material times, when he was unwell, would appoint immediately the vice president as acting president at all material times. Especially last year when he went for 2 operations, the vice president was acting. And in January it was also the case. When he was unwell, the vice president was acting president of the Republic of Namibia. So it's incorrect, Mr. Jebela, to assert that anybody somewhere willingly kept President Gengo in office whilst he was unwell. That is incorrect, because you as a journalist, you have all the information that within a space of less than 15 days from the diagnosis to the passing, it was 15 days. Now, what is the period that you're talking about?
No, I just wanted you to make it clear for my audience, because of course those questions have popped up around that time. And I'm also asking because President Gengo has always prided himself as a new sort of generation African leader. He didn't want to be perceived as a typical African leader, as we know many of them who would die in the office, who would be sickly, some of them even in wheelchairs, and still serve as president. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
But I really don't know what is a typical African leader.
You want me to give you?
That's the stuff of Afro-pessimist.
I can tell you African leaders who are in wheelchairs. The president of Algeria for the longest of times has suffered from stroke. The president of
you cannot generalize
of Gabon had stroke. Those are African typical leaders.
I think it's the stuff of Afro-pessimist to talk about a typical African leader, because there's nothing like that.
But
there's nothing like that.
But Afro-pessimism is also is not a concept that is emerging out of nowhere. It's coming out of observations of what is happening in Africa. The president, the late president, spoke about the new Africa, the Africa that we want, because he was very clear in his mind also that there were aspects of the African leadership.
About the past. He was talking about a third wave of African leaders.
Yes.
He was talking about a culture of democratic governance that has become entrenched on the African continent over the past more than 2 decades. The majority of African states today are democracies. Leaders come through elections.
Not really, I think.
But I don't think it's the conversation. But I just wanted to footnote that very quickly. But it's incorrect.
It's not incorrect.
And it's also not right for an African to talk about a typical African leader who's this way or that way.
No,
we have African leaders across the continent. We have a continent that over the past 2 decades has made substantive progress in terms of human development. Just go and look at each and every report on the development of Africa. You will see that there's no African country over the past 2 decades that has not made progress in terms of human development. The majority of African states today are democracies. So just to assure you and to take you out of your fears as you want to reason about a typical African leader.
You and I live on the same African continent. We observe these things, both of us, every day. I think Southern Africa is fairly calm, but if you go elsewhere, especially up north, west and up north, you have leaders. Even the president of Egypt, one of the greatest, one of the biggest states in Africa, he came through a coup, and all those kind of things. But the president was clear because he always supported democratic transitions, and that is the only point that I was trying to make, to say. But there are islands of leaders who are just not what he wanted to see. But let's move on, Dr. Hengari. The President Mbumba, is he substantive or acting president of Namibia?
The Constitution of the Republic of Namibia is very clear that on the 4th of February, our systems, our processes, and our institutions, guided by the supreme law of the land, ensured that President Mbumba was appointed as the substantive president of the Republic of Namibia, with all the powers that are vested in the president.
But that is where I have. So of course he has all the powers. Article 34 that made a lot of noise around that time speaks about whoever takes over must act as president until elections. The word act is in black and white in that article. But suddenly we were told that we must no longer interpret it in the way that we have always interpreted act. Why must we change the definition of act suddenly?
Trevor, jurists debated this matter, and I don't think that we want to question the wisdom of a Chief Justice when he presides over such an important process as one of the custodians of our laws. And the Constitution also is quite clear that in the absence of the President, the Vice President or any other person duly nominated assumes the office of the President with all the powers that are vested in the President. And it is where we are. I think it's an unnecessary polemic.
It's very, very necessary.
It's an unnecessary polemic because this event, unfortunate event, tragic event as it was, intervened within less than 1 year of presidential and National Assembly elections, and that was maybe the ray of light that we had, because it did not upset our system in a manner that would have upset it had it intervened outside that period of 1 year, because we would have been forced to call elections within 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. So the buses left the station to Ivo. It's 6 months later.
Yeah.
We have a president who is duly appointed, consistent with our constitution, and with all the powers vested in the head of state and president of the Republic of Namibia. So just be reassured that President Mbumba also made it very clear that he will serve out the remainder of the term, and he'll be moving around Olukonda, his farm.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's a polemic we should have.
But that is exactly I'm being a devil's advocate here. When President Mbumba assumed this responsibility, his entire being, his body language, his attitude, his everything was that of a person who understood that and you just mentioned it now, that he was only here to serve the remainder of the late president. And he has been very vocal about it. I remember when he went to South Africa to introduce himself to President Ramaphosa, and he held an interview with, I think, Sophie Mokoena of SABC, and he kept hammering on that point to say, I am only here to serve the remainder of my president. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to make any appointments. I'm going to retain the staff as they are, including yourself. And he you know, that is an attitude of somebody who understood that he was really just serving the remainder of that term. Then came this whole debate in the media and social media and everywhere else. Suddenly, we are told, no, the man is actually, forget about the acting president that is being spoken about in Article 34. He is the substantive president. And I'm wondering whether he was coerced into that by people around him.
No, I think really, Mr. Jembela, you are trying to take us down a path that leads us to nowhere.
It's a very important conversation to have as a country.
And I think this conversation was for February, and the debate is closed.
In the future,
the debate is closed.
Future, similar situations could come up.
The debate is closed, and our constitution closed that debate.
Does he want the PECs?
And it's very clear that President Mbumba is the fourth president of the Republic of Namibia.
Is it because of the PECs?
And what that means, is that he is a substantive president of the Republic of Namibia. That's why he's the fourth. And I think we can spend the whole day talking about this matter, and many of us reflected, we read carefully, we sought legal opinions, and the debate is closed. We now have the fourth president of the Republic of Namibia, consistent with the loss of our land, and that's President Mbumba, and will go down as such.
Yeah. You see, the reason I'm asking this, Alfredo, is not because I want us to take us back, because life will continue. There will be a time in the future of this country when we will have a situation where an incoming president, for one reason or another, it doesn't have to be death necessarily, but any other condition that may occur. And we need as a country to be very clear whether our constitution actually says we can have a substantive president who has not been elected by the people of this country.
And we provided clarity on that on the 4th of February. That clarity was provided, and the constitution guided us in providing that clarity and that assurance to the Namibian people that the actions that were undertaken are consistent with the letter and spirit of the Namibian Constitution. And that's why I emphasized the fact that had the unfortunate passing of our president intervened in a period outside the 12 months, then we would have called the elections in 90 days. And in this case, if it's below that mandatory period of 12 months, then the vice president or any other person duly empowered, it could be the prime minister, it could be deputy prime minister, had the vice president refused, that would have been the process. The constitution is also very clear on that. But fortunately, we have a vice president in this country, and at the time the president was President Mbumba, and accepted to serve the Namibian people during that very difficult period. And I think our focus as Namibians should be on the manner in which President Mbumba assumed that very difficult task with gravity and with pain, and was able to pull us out of that very difficult period where some were uncertain, debating, where are we going, what is happening, and confidently and modestly led the Namibian people out of that collective anguish to a point where we are now today, 6 months later, and now in his final sprint of the presidency, less than 100 days before elections, and slightly over 6 months to our next transition. And I think what we need to focus on as Namibians also, and what many of you should write about one day, is how we carried out a transition in a manner that was exemplary. And President Mbumba has also been quite lofty in his praise of the Namibian people, always saying that without the patience and the wisdom of the Namibian people, the task might have been very difficult. So we made it much easier for him. Therefore, our focus as Namibians is not the sideshow. The side debate, the stuff we talk about, on social media. I think it's the strategic questions of the day, and the strategic questions of the day.
It's bigger than social media, Alfredo. The thing is that for me, my fear always, as a Namibian citizen, is setting dangerous precedents. That has always been, and I think people undermine the power of precedent as a concept, because what we are saying now, if we are to go with that definition, and in terms of the transition, I have tweeted, when was it? Maybe 3-4 days, maybe a day or two after the death of the president and the swearing in of President Mbumba. I said I was very proud, and that we must be consoled as citizens of Namibia by that transition. No gunshots, no military tanks on the streets. That was my tweet. It's still there.
So if you're proud, what is this discussion all about? 3 days ago, what has changed between 3 days and now?
No, because my understanding at the time of tweeting, and it doesn't even change anything, my understanding was that we are getting an acting president. But now, if we go with the interpretations of the Chief Justice and everybody else that you're talking about, it means...
The Chief Justice administered.
Yes, of course.
We have the Attorney General, we have a Minister of Justice, we have jurists in government.
I agree.
And we have a cabinet, that is the highest decision-making body in the executive. And
I agree. The cabinet, the same cabinet.
Matters are debated, decisions are taken, and interpreted accordingly and consistent with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
No, the cabinet has not always gotten things right. But the only thing that I'm saying is that going forward, I was talking about precedent. It means that our Constitution does not, on the basis of that interpretation, it does not make provision whatsoever for an acting president.
Our Constitution does make provision.
If one president leaves,
and you also know
the next one is president automatically.
You know very well
that's what you're saying.
That it does make provision for an acting president when the president is unable to perform his function.
But it doesn't.
No, let me finish.
It's derived from the same.
Let me finish.
But there's no
other.
No.
Let me finish.
There's no other act. It's only the same act.
No, exactly. Let me finish. For example, in January, when President Gengo was unwell,
yes,
he appointed Vice President Mbumba to be the acting president. So the president has the powers to appoint an acting president. In our Constitution, in the event of the president being unable to perform permanently the duties of president, and also within a certain period, as I had consistently emphasized, our Constitution allows for the appointment of a president until, to complete the remainder of the term. And that's what happened. So Trevor, be rest assured that we pondered on these questions, they were interpreted, and the law stands. The law stands. And we are a country that now has experienced 34 years later. It's not a long period in the life of a nation, as you may know. But there are many things that we've gotten right. And the 4th of February was one of them.
That's true. But it means that whenever a situation arises in the future where a president resigns, where a president steps down, the next person just becomes president. That's what you're saying. There's no provision whatsoever to act. The person that is not
appointed. The person is appointed.
No.
Appointed
The act
as
says
president. Appointed. It also
Article
talks about the
34
appointment. It also talks about the appointment.
Article 34
as
talks about
president
acting president
of the Republic of Namibia. It
Yeah.
also talks about the appointment.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And that's where we are. The appointment of the president of the Republic of Namibia to complete the remainder of the term. Because we are in a certain period.
Yeah.
Elections will be held in November. Namibians will elect a new head of state, hopefully a female.
Yeah.
So we move from there.
We move from there. No, it's okay. You see, we can remove President Mbumba out of the equation for a minute. The reason why this conversation is so important, Dr. Hengari, is that it's not just about the power and the tools that a person in that position under these circumstances is entrusted with. There are also far-reaching things such as the perks that come with being declared a substantive president. It means that you are entitled now to a lifetime salary as provided by our constitution, our laws. You are entitled to a house. I think the minimum cost of that house is around 30 million. It's a lot of things. It's taxpayers' money. So we need to know whether anybody who can just, a substantive president dies or resigns, and then some guy just pops in, then he's declared full president already, and then the nation is obliged to pay his lifetime salary and build him a house, security details and all these kind of things. So the implications are far-reaching. That's why we need to be clear as a people. Whether I'm wrong in my interpretation is okay, but we just need to be clear as a people.
Yeah, no, I think, Mr. Jebela, you are making serious matters of state banal. And I think maybe the conversation you wanted to have is the PECs. Because that's where you are going.
It's overarching.
But
it's an overarching conversation.
I think that we cannot discuss a black swan event of that nature in terms of the PECs. It's not every day that you find a head of state passing away in office. Yes. And it's not every day. It's a black swan event.
But it's not
so
just...
now let me just continue. And I think that
it's not just about the death.
You're also talking about important positions of the state. As no, some guy just comes in.
Yes.
It's the vice president of the Republic of Namibia that we're talking about. It's not just some guy.
It could have been anyone else.
And it could have been maybe a cabinet minister, but it's also, again, a cabinet minister. It's not just some guy. It's not just some bloke. These are important positions in the life of a state, in the governance of a state.
I hear you.
So we should not make them banal. And we should not have conversations about perks and benefits.
It's important.
In as far as the important position of head of state is concerned.
People can impose on...
And over the past 34 years, Namibia has only had 4 heads of state in 34 years. So it's not something that happens every day and to everybody.
I agree.
And I think it's within that peculiar nature of the office and the special individuals who happen to occupy them, that we should have the conversation. We should not reduce these serious matters to pegs. Now we are discussing the question of President Mbumba in terms of pegs. President Mbumba,
because I sincerely believe,
President Mbumba assumed office with tears. President Gengo was his close friend, close comrade, a brother, and the only thing President Mbumba wanted was to retire with his friend. They visit each other on the farm. They meet here in Windhoek or wherever and chat about the good old days. That's what all President Mbumba wanted.
I know. That's why I think that.
So, that's why I think we should also accord him that respect and courtesy.
I think he's respected.
That he deserves under these very difficult circumstances.
I think he's respected, but
we should not turn this matter into.
But the country and the constitution is bigger than President
Mbumba. Of course,
Mbumba.
and I think President Mbumba knows that far better than you and I.
It's bigger than all of us.
And he knows that far better than you and I.
That's why we have to ask these questions, and we must ask these questions because it might not be President Mbumba today. Maybe he's in the office for good intentions, and we also understand the circumstances under which he ascended to that position.
But that debate is closed.
But there will be a day. But this is where the
Constitution closed that debate.
This is where the problem is, because you keep thinking about the past. I'm saying
the Constitution, our Constitution.
I'm saying to you, these things can occur again in the future.
No, I think
we have to be prepared as a country for the future incidents.
Mr. Twivo Jembela, take the resources of Namibia Media Holdings, institute legal action.
We are just citizens.
That's what I'm saying.
No, we are just citizens having a conversation.
Because we are having a conversation.
I have no locus standi to do anything like that. But I have a right to know as a citizen.
Yeah, and your right to know
how things must happen going forward.
Your right to know is important, and I accord that to you. But at the same time,
you're dismissing my
No, I'm not dismissing
my right to know.
I'm not dismissing your right to know. But I think, ignorance becomes even more dangerous. So in this case, the debate is closed. There's no debate. Our Constitution, I don't know what is the right English word, but our Constitution closed this debate. It closed this debate. Our Constitution closed this debate.
Yeah, because we are now in a generation of what do they call it? It's happening in the ruling party, it's happening in government. Interpretations, suddenly things no longer mean what they meant all along. And that is where my problem is, because it says the person must act as president until elections, but suddenly
appointed.
Appointed. Yes.
The person is appointed.
No, but it says act.
The person is appointed.
It's in black and white. It says act as president.
But you are refusing to accept the fact that the person is appointed as president.
Not elected.
Appointed.
Exactly.
To complete the remainder of the term.
Yes.
And that's where we are.
Last question, Dr. Hengari. Is President Mbumba deliberately sitting back to allow Vice President Nangolo Mbumba to sort of be at the forefront of many things of state and help her increase her chances of winning the election in November, because she is very visible and the president is not as visible?
No, that is incorrect, Mr. Jembela. Twivo, you would have seen that President Mbumba over the past 6 months, he's been having many irons in the fire. He has been everywhere in this country. He has met many Namibians, traditional leaders, business leaders, political parties. As we speak now, he's in consultations with political parties that are represented in in our parliament to talk to them about matters of the state, a difficult year of elections, development, listening to their concerns around the issues that they have, and providing solutions to the challenges we face as Namibians. You would have seen him at sports events. You would have seen him meeting other heads of state. He's a very busy man, and maybe you don't cover him enough, so you might assume that he's not that visible, but he is the head of state and he's very visible. And of course, the vice president has a very highly congested agenda. She's very busy, and it's also within the role of the vice president to be very busy. But that does not take away from the fact that President Mbumba every day is in meetings, every day is dealing with problems. He's the president in cabinet. And the coming 6 months are even going to be more intense. The president has a number of engagements and consultations. You would recall that he met with religious leaders from all denominations, and he's been busy in the region. Namibia is a member of the SADC organ troika. So we are dealing with a number of issues in the presidency, and both President Mbumba and Vice President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah are extremely busy, and their concern, unlike that of Mr. Jembela, is the welfare of the Namibian people.
How is that not my concern also? I
don't know.
I empower communities every day. I write stories. I raise people's concerns.
No, I'm just saying.
Bring them to the pedestal.
I'm just saying.
I'm equally concerned about.
So
our
that is really what is preoccupying President Mbumba at present. He always talks about people must have food.
Yeah.
People must work with their hands, with their brains, to ensure that there's food for all Namibians. That's a very basic interpretation of the complexity of the task. And actually, that's what matters, is that Namibians, their welfare, their safety, and their prosperity is assured within what is humanly possible.
Yeah.
During the next 6 months. The past 6 months have been difficult, but I mean the amount of work that President Mbumba has cleared from his table, the amount of work the vice president has taken on, also delegated by the president. You must not forget that some of the work is delegated by the president. It's a full desk, but both are working very hard to clear the desk, to ensure that you and I benefit from the dividend of independence.
I hear you. Dr. Alfredo Hengari, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Wonderful. That is Dr. Alfredo Hengari. He's advisor to President Nangolo Mbumba, also his press secretary, speaking to us, of course, about those issues that you just heard him talk about. Thank you for watching.